If you're able to do so, could you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Clerk, can you please take roll call?
Yes, good evening. Member Anderson?
Present.
Member Noonenkamp?
Present.
Member Russell?
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Present.
Member Wink?
Present.
Member Woodward?
Present.
Mayor Sierra?
Present.
All 7 present.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 5, consideration of minutes from the previous session. Any changes to the minutes from the meeting on January 3rd, 2023? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the minutes from January 3rd, 2023?
I move to approve the minutes from January 3rd.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Noonenkamp. Can we please vote?
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Noonenkamp?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Aye.
Member Wink?
Aye.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you. There's no appointments, communications, proclamations, or recognition tonight. I am now moving on to agenda item 7, recognition of scheduled public comment. The deadline to sign up to speak for scheduled public comment is Wednesday by 5 p.m. prior to the meeting through the city clerk's office. This is an opportunity for the public to address city council. There is an expectation that the presentation will be conducted in a respectful manner. Council may ask questions for clarification, but there will not be any dialogue. Please limit your presentation to 5 minutes. Written materials for the presentation to council may be submitted to the city clerk. Up first, we have Gary Kozek here in Englewood Citizen to address the council regarding the Oxford Redevelopment. And Mr. Kozek, before you begin, I know that we have a public hearing tonight. As you can see within the note, there has been a request by the applicant to postpone the hearing. So Mr. Kozek, did you want to go ahead and continue to speak here tonight during public comment, or did you want to wait until?
I'm scheduled to, if you do have the hearing, I'm scheduled to talk there too. This is pertaining to, it's in the same neighborhood, but it's pertaining to the infrastructure of the city of Englewood.
Okay, and Mr.
Not
Kozek,
just-
I just wanted to state, within our council policies, we do have we have stated that we will only allow an item regarding the public hearing to actually be addressed during the public hearing and not during public comment. I do find this situation a little bit difficult just because of the possible postponement tonight. So before you begin to speak, Mr. Kozak, I'm going to ask members of council if they are comfortable with you speaking tonight during this section, or if we should hold off until the public hearing. So any suggestion from members of council? Member Russell.
Thank you. I heard him just say that it doesn't pertain to the public hearing. It's about the infrastructure in Englewood.
Thank you, Member Russell. Anyone see anything different there, Member Noonenkamp?
I concur. I would say all of the citizens are invited to participate in accordance with council policies, that nothing regarding a possible public hearing tonight would be covered, but otherwise we'd love to hear their comments.
Perfect. I don't see any disagreements. Mr. Kozak, go ahead with your 5 minutes. If you could just state your name and your address or your cross streets, and then we can begin.
That's Gary, it's Gary Kozak, 1260 West Oxford, and it's improperly spelled. It's Kozacek. I'm a former city councilman on here from in the 80s, so I kind of know some of what's going on.
Gary Kozak.
Yeah. Who, what?
That came from online. I'm not sure why somebody repeated your name, but let's restart the clock, and Mr. Kozak, give us a second there. Mr. Kozak, go ahead when you're ready.
Okay, the other day, when I got to speak in front of everybody, I had some infrastructure proposals and discussion. There was 2 members not here. I have copies for that. I'm reissuing this copy on the record, okay? And that can be talked about later, all right? To come back to this point, all right? I do snow removal within the city. I've been doing snow removal for better than 30 years. I do the Metal Gold Dairy and several businesses around the area. We do have a problem down there with the light rail, and I had them on picture here, but they didn't transfer over to my disk drive. In front of the dairy, we get it cleaned, and then if they come by quick, especially on the west side, then they throw snow back on the sidewalk. Okay, but on the other side where the light rail is, they've got a 2-3 foot high. They take all the snow off the sidewalk and put it in the parking space over there, and they don't seem to clean that up. So I got a little problem there, and you will see if you go down, and I'll present that later on the Sam's property. The other thing I wanted to bring up was a suggestion for the city council on the driveways. When you look at all the driveways with LaPan Street, I'm right on the corner there. You have the Metal Gold Dairy Main Street there. They have 200 trucks per day. They come in and out of there, plus the people that drive them go in and they move their truck and park their car in that vehicle spot. So you're talking close to 300 vehicles transferring in there twice a day or 3 times a day, plus you got over-the-road tankers. And I've got those up here on display, okay? Yep, it's not turned on now for me. Anyway, I've got this on a disc. It just shows all the truck traffic. The 18-wheelers come across with the milk. Okay, they have to turn in that driveway to get in there and make the turn to be able to unload it. There is a problem there because we've got their driveway, LaPan Street. They took away one of my driveways because it was too close, and now you got the rec center driveway on the west side. My request is the city council consider closing that driveway off and moving it, putting a new driveway onto Oxford up where the walkway's at. That would allow the queuing to be far enough apart, because we had a car the other night, I wasn't there, when one of the over-the-road haulers was turning, some car drove right underneath him. And when you're coming out of the rec center, you don't have as good a vision because you've got that other driveway if there's a truck waiting to get out. Then you've got the island in the middle of all of it, where if somebody wants to go in the rec center, I cannot get in a turning lane to turn south on LaPan Street. Now you put the tankers in there waiting to turn in and out. And with that island, a tanker that's going westbound or a 18-wheeler going westbound has to now get past the island and then wheel way out across the oncoming traffic to be able to make that turn. So the restructure of the infrastructure there needs to be considered. How can we realign that to make that safer? This is pertaining to the rec center. The parking and stuff around there, when there's a special event on there, I get all sorts of traffic parking on my street, which is fine because of the rec center, but now I have a problem with the safety of them crossing the street. Something for city council to consider. The 2 that I asked to go into record, I will give to the clerk for the 2 members that weren't here then. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kozak. Any questions? Member Woodward?
Let him get back there. Just to clarify, where you're suggesting putting the exit from the rec center is further to the east, correct?
Yes, it's
on
right where the
Oxford?
sidewalk goes from the main door, from the front door out to the street. You can make an exit, an entrance, just on one side of that.
Okay,
And that would give you another probably 40 or 50 feet of queuing and a lot better vision to look both ways of what the traffic's doing to get on and off. Because right now it's a mess. If somebody decides that they're going to turn into the rec center and I'm already in the lane to turn left, now we're a stalemate. If they're in the lane already, I have to go beyond that, but now I can't get enough room to get the tail end out, so now my tail end's stuck out in the middle of the traffic.
okay.
If you add a semi coming out or coming in either way, now we have a real problem. It's a big stalemate and it only creates hazards.
So basically aligned with the 3 doors to the rec center. That would be good,
Yeah,
I think, as opposed to the corner.
Yeah, just move it up further where you still have 2 entrances there, but you move it up further so we don't have all the same driveways in the same area.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
Any other questions? Doing my job for me, Mr. Kozak. I think we're good. Thank you very much for your comments
Thank
tonight.
you. I'm going to leave this plugged in for the next session.
Sounds great. And that concludes scheduled public comment. I'm now moving on to recognition of unscheduled public comment. Same rules apply, but you're limited to 3 minutes. And do we have the list? We're gonna make the city clerk walk. And walk and walk. Okay.
I just can't tell, only two people notated public hearings, so we may have to ask.
Sounds good. So the city clerk, you're just stating that there's members of the public online that may want to speak as well during unscheduled public comment, but we may have to ask them towards the end of this, correct? Okay, perfect. All right, we do have some members of the public that want to speak. I have Daniel Reed, I believe, here to speak regarding the public hearing, I believe.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Reed, if you name and your address or cross streets.
Yep, Daniel Reed, 4200 South Opan. Good evening, everyone. I'm taking a chance by giving a little bit of public comment on the process about this PUD because last time it took us 3 hours. 3 hours, 45 plus citizens, 3 hours to get to public comment. We're unhappy about that. So I'm taking a chance by addressing some of that commentary around process right here, right now. First thing is, as many of you know, I work in public service for a very long time. That's been something that I'm very passionate about. The reason I got into that is because I wanted to stick up for the little guy. And it really concerns me that a lot of what I've seen by our city officials sitting here today is that they don't stick up for the little guy. In fact, they're not standing up for citizens at all. And that's really clear throughout the process that we have been watching for the past year. There's a lot of bullying, frankly, that goes on with city staff. First thing is they deny. For example, when the city attorney rewrote the municipal code when giving legal advice, she denied that she did that. She said it's just a new process. They obfuscate. When I asked Brian Esham for a one-pager just to explain this process, he never responded. They gaslight. They tell us that our public safety shouldn't be something that is concerning to us right here. I think you all know that public health is the number one thing that we're concerned about. In fact, just last time that we were here, our library officials came and made national news, by the way, on NBC News about their public health concerns, and we all stood up for them. Let's do that for neighbors. And finally, they confuse. This is a confusing meeting. Can we address the elephant in the room? Nobody knows what's being voted on or how. That's not a process that builds trust. I want to address two council people here because you've asked for trust. Councilperson Wink, Councilperson Unikamp, in the last two issues of the Englewood magazine, you said, here's how you as citizens can get engaged. But it's really hard to be engaged when we feel like we're fighting the city for years and years. Every time I come up here and speak, I get unsolicited phone calls, emails, people knocking on my door saying, I've experienced that too. So I know I'm not the only one. Looking at the time, I can't see it. In any rate, look, thank you. At the end of the day, I want to engage civically. I sit on boards, I sit on committees. I really do want to commit to this city. It's really hard the way that it's going right now. Our civic institutions, unfortunately, from our perspective, are failing us. We're really asking for a little bit more right now. That's all I'm going to say on this topic. I appreciate all of your time and consideration.
Mr. Reed, thank you very much for your time tonight. Any questions from members of council? Member Noonekamp.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Reed, thank you for being here again this evening.
Yep.
As you noted, I take public engagement actually quite seriously and have continued to really fight for our meetings to be very accessible to the public.
Point of order.
I'm getting to my question. Is that okay?
I thought this was only about questions.
Apologies. I'll get to my question. My question is, what are your ideas? Can you share with us your ideas for how we can make the meetings more accessible to the public?
I feel antagonized by the city of Englewood. That is the number one barrier to engaging civically with committees and city government.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions from the members of council? Seeing none, Mr. Reed, thank you very much for your time tonight. Up next, I believe we have Mr. David, is it Frisbee? Here to also address regarding public comment, and just as a notice, Member Wink will be providing a response to public comment tonight. Good evening.
Good evening, David Frisbee, 1050 West Stanford Drive. To the point that Daniel made and what we've talked, or what we've heard as far as the kind of the confusion around the process tonight. My comments are centered around the PUD, so with that said, I will withhold until the hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Frisbee. Let me see, Member Wink, go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor. Daniel, is the confusion, forgive me if I'm asking the dumb question, is the confusion around us voting to
The voting, the
potentially,
delay,
Oh,
whether,
okay.
yeah, if we're
That's
gonna have
the
the hearing,
confusion
my
you're referring
comments
to.
are centered around that, and what I've gathered
Sure.
are,
Okay.
that's not tonight, so.
Okay, yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. David Frisbee? Seeing none, Mr. Frisbee, thank you very much for your comments. Up next, we have Ms. Kathleen Bailey here to also address, I believe, the public comment. Good evening, Ms. Bailey. If you could just state your name and your address or cross streets.
Kathleen Bailey, Jason and Union. I am here tonight because I'm concerned about environmental contamination on automotive industrial sites. And city leaders and city council are fully aware of that reality based on this city's need to create EAF, the Englewood Environmental Foundation. EAF itself was created by city staff in order to remove the city from potential liability while hazardous petroleum contamination was being cleaned up on two existing city-owned previous automotive industrial sites within the city center, the JCPenney Auto Center and the Chevron Station. And these very same city leaders and city council members have not even bothered to inform any citizens that based on recent CDPHE recommendations, these same two existing sites, JCPenney Auto Center and Chevron Center, are, as we speak, currently undergoing additional soil and water sampling and analysis to identify if residential contamination may still be present on those sites and require additional cleanup. Because I could not find any evidence of any mention anywhere during any public meeting of any consideration of assessment of environmental contamination on the Sam's automotive site, I directly inquired with my city councilman on January 4th. And on January 5th, Director Power kindly responded, informing me that the design consultant for the developer indicated that a phase 1 environmental assessment is being completed for the property. Additional steps will follow if required based on the assessment. The applicant will reference the environmental investigation during their presentation to council at the public hearing on July 17th. But subsequently, the developer asked Community Development for postponement of today's hearing. I would like to ask Community Development and or the developer, what is the status of the phase 1 environmental site assessment? When did it begin? When will it be completed? And where will those results be posted? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bailey. Any questions for Ms. Bailey from council? Seeing none, Ms. Bailey, thank you for your time tonight. Last person to speak here in person is James Myers, here to speak about public comment. Good evening, Mr. Myers. If you could just state your name and your address or cross streets.
James Myers, M-Y-E-R-S. The address on my state-issued ID is that of California. It is at 3108 Glendale Boulevard, number 548, Los Angeles, 90039.
Okay, and Mr. Myers, you stated your address. Go ahead.
What's that?
You stated your address. You're free to speak now for 3 minutes.
Okay, so yes, I do not have an Englewood address. At present, I was recently working at a company based here in Englewood, Colorado, Quality Logistics. And I just experienced some things over there that I was confused about how to proceed or address the problems. And so I'm taking this opportunity now to at least go on the record. I don't know if this is the proper forum for it or not, but just for a little background on me, first job I've ever had was at McDonald's right across the street. So I'm not new to this area. Most recently, I've been working as an over-the-road truck driver. It's really isolated me from family, friends, any kind of community. I really don't have a house that I maintain or an address anywhere. And so I also don't have the spouse, the kids, the car payments, any of that really, anything that most people here do have. And and that kind of contributes to the problem, I think, of me speaking here, not being a citizen of Englewood. But don't even know how to say it other than to just say it, but it seems that I was born into some kind of I don't know if it's a program or a program or an agency of this country, but they've showed me that they operate nationwide. I have operated nationwide, and they pretty much greet me by name everywhere I go. So most recently, I wanted to leave Los Angeles and sort of come home. Took that job here in Englewood. Things were going great, and I woke up, or I went to bed. Things were fine. I was kind of on a day off. I woke up. I couldn't walk. My foot was injured. I went to an urgent care. They said I had a broken foot. I do not know how that happened. It is not the first time that something like that has happened to me. And it looks like that's my 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Really, for me to speak on the subject, I got a lifetime of this. So,
No, that's okay, Mr. Myers. Thank you very much for speaking tonight. Any questions for council? I'll actually say here something in a second. Member Russell, go ahead.
Do you have family here in Englewood?
not that I know of.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Russell. So actually, Mr. Myers, we do have staff on hand, or we have people that you can speak to if there's something that you want to speak to them about. I'm not sure if City Manager, if you want to go ahead and just put Mr. Myers in touch with any of the resources that we have available within the city. I know that we have an officer here as well that may be able to assist you with that, but we will like to try to make resources available to you if there is something that you want to say tonight or speak to us. So, but thank you very much for coming tonight. So is there anything else, Mr. Myers, or?
Yes, I'd like to be clear on this. So am I able to speak to the city manager?
Yeah, city manager.
Police officer and sort of give them the questions that I have
Perfect. Yeah.
for you guys?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
That could work. So yeah, we can definitely make someone available here in a second to just answer some of the questions that you may happen to have.
And as I was sitting here, it came to me that I perhaps should have started by filing a police report. It seems like the logical first step.
Perfect, Mr. Myers. Thank you very much for coming to speak tonight. And that now concludes the in-person portion of unscheduled public comment. City Clerk, you did state that there may be some people that want to speak online. Did you want to rattle off names?
I'll just try to open it up, and then if they want to speak now, I'll have them do that. So I'll
Sounds
just go
great.
down the list.
Thank you, City Clerk.
Sorry, I'm asking them to unmute. All right, is this Tara Connors?
Yes, my name is actually Tara Mark,
Oh, sorry
and I
about
live
that.
on the cross street of Princeton and Elodie.
Okay, did you want to go ahead and speak now during public comment or wait until the public hearing?
Well, I'm actually a little bit confused because I attended this meeting because I thought it was public comments about the Sam's development. So I'm not sure if this is the proper time to make a comment on that, but that's what I thought this meeting was.
It is.
And I'm sorry, was it Sarah?
Tara.
Oh, Tara.
Tara?
Tara, what's your last name?
Marks, M-A-R-K-S.
Perfect. Ms. Marks, you are free to speak right now regarding the public comment or the PUD, or you can also wait until the
Mayor, point of order.
Yes.
We have a council policy that prohibits speaking about the PUD that would be talked about in the public hearing during public comment before the public hearing is called.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Okay, so just as a clarification, give me a second, Ms. Marks. The comment earlier today when I asked for a vote, that was specifically for Mr., it wasn't Mr. Reed, it was Mr. Kozak. That was specifically because it was outside of the PUD, correct? Okay, so Ms. Marks, actually, we're gonna ask you to wait until the public hearing, which will be right after this session. Is that okay, Ms. Marks?
Oh, right after this session this evening?
So yeah, it'll still be this meeting, probably be within 10 minutes or so, depending on how many more public comments we have for tonight.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I've just never done this before, so I
No,
didn't
it's
know.
fine. Thank you very much, Ms. Marks.
Mayor?
Yes,
you.
Member Anderson.
I think if I could just make a kind of an informational comment.
Sure.
I feel like we've had a number of people say they're confused. And I think that's maybe we haven't explained clearly enough because we have a lot of people who don't typically come to city council meetings. So I just want to explain a little bit about what we always have public comment at the beginning of city council meetings. And then the public hearing is a separate agenda item, and that always lands in the same place in the meeting later on. And so that's why I think it's kind of confusing tonight is that we have two different sections for kind of public comment. One is now general public comment that anybody can show up for that happens at every city council meeting. The one later on in the meeting is a public hearing specifically regarding the development. Now, we've also heard that we may be being asked to postpone that, and so that means that that public hearing may not be tonight, but we don't know if that's going to happen until we vote on it. So we can, I don't know how my fellow council members are going to vote on that. So that's why we're like, we may delay you until later tonight, but it may be till a further meeting in the future. And I understand that that's not, that's not the ideal process for everybody, but that's just kind of the way this meeting has landed. So for those who are here for public comment unrelated to Sam's Automotive Development, we'd love to hear from you. We would really appreciate, and our policy states that we require you wait for those public comments regarding the Sam's development for that public hearing because it is a quasi-judicial hearing, and that's where we are required by our ordinances to hear comments on that hearing. Hopefully that clarifies. Thank you for letting me do that.
Thank you
Mayor.
very much for the clarification, Member Anderson. And with that, I will pass it to the city clerk. Do we have another speaker tonight?
All right. The next caller that I asked to unmute, if you wanted to speak now, if you could just state your name for the record.
This is Chris Hainsworth, Princeton and Lottie, and I'll wait until the hearing for Sam's Automotive.
Okay, great. Thank you. Michael Chavez, would you like to speak now or during the public hearing?
Oh, I'm sorry. I will not be speaking tonight.
Okay, thank you. Alex Hazer, would you like to speak tonight or, now or during the public hearing?
Yes, just a general question. We talked about there being some confusion about the agenda for this meeting tonight. And I'm looking on the website for Englewood, and the last published agenda is from 2016. Is there somewhere else I should be looking for this type of information?
Ms. Hazer, we can send you some information. I'm not sure if city clerk or anybody has some information, but there is a specific calendar that does show what is on the agenda tonight, so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hazer. Go ahead, city clerk.
Jim Spiegel, did you want to speak right now or during the public hearing? Sorry, I've got two people that I just can't get off of mute. Okay, I think we should just move on.
Perfect. So, city clerk, just to confirm, we are We got through all the names for unscheduled public
I
comment.
believe the people that are online do want to speak during the public hearing.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, City Clerk. And with that, that now concludes unscheduled public comment. I will pass it over to Member Wing for a response.
Thanks, Mayor. Mr. Kozek, thank you for your comments. We certainly appreciate your experience with traffic and at the intersection in question especially, and your recommendations to locate driveways in that area. The traffic counts, the driveway placements, and the needed signal upgrades have been noted by our city leadership tonight and will all be taken into consideration with any new development proposed. As a matter of fact, safety within and around our intersections is a primary focus of our Vision Zero efforts to reduce the number and severity of traffic accidents in our city. So thank you for bringing that forward tonight. I don't know that you can speak at this point.
Mr. Kozak, we actually don't provide additional response. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kozak.
Mr. Daniel Reed, David Frisbee, I'm sorry I called you Daniel earlier. I was in the middle of my notes. Civic engagement's a critical component, right, to a community's growth and well-being. So as such, I'll say that the leadership in the city of Englewood intentionally follows best practice in terms of how we enable constituents to engage in the city through public hearings, these times of public comment. Tonight's a bit of an anomaly, and I certainly recognize the discomfort and just the dis-ease it's causing some citizens, especially as the mayor just said, or as perhaps it was Member Anderson, that the citizens that don't regularly attend are particularly thrown off by this extra component. The other section, that residents may feel antagonized, is certainly not a complaint we hear often, I will say. So I've definitely asked the city manager to reach out to you, Mr. Reed specifically, or both of you if you'd like, to get more information on the experience you've had that caused you to say that tonight, so that we can improve in this area where possible. I know that this is the expectation of council and also a goal of our staff to ensure better experiences for our constituents. I'm sorry to hear you feel this, and we're empathetic. Kathleen Bailey, thank you for your communications to council via email and for again sharing your thoughts on public health and welfare with us tonight. What Director Power shared with you via email is probably the most research and accurate response, and we do expect that the results of the environmental analysis will indeed be part of the discussion at the upcoming PUD public hearing. So thank you, Kathleen. Mr. Myers is thankfully being supported by our police and city manager, and I think that's it.
Member Wing, thank you very much for the response. Moving on to agenda item 9, there are no consent agenda items tonight, which moves us now on to the public hearing items. And as everybody is aware, the applicant has brought forward a request to postpone the public hearing until March 6, 2023. So actually, City Attorney, before I open the public hearing, I just want to make sure I got the timing here correct. We will still be, in order to hear the reasoning from the applicant on the reason for the postponement, I still need to ask members of council to vote to open the public hearing. Then obviously we'll vote at that point. And then we would hear from the applicant on the reasoning for postponement. Do I have that correct, City Attorney Niles?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Point of information.
Yes, Member Russell.
So why, seeing that the mayor and the mayor pro tem are in charge of agenda setting and the request came before the mayor manager meeting, why could it not have just been answered at that point and taken off of the agenda instead of having to open it and all of the confusion that was created by this?
I'm happy to take that, Councilmember Russell. Under municipal code, City Council has the authority to adjourn a public hearing once it's set, but only upon commencement of that public hearing. At the time the request, or we were notified there would be a request for a continuance, the hearing had already been noticed It's required to be published, it's required to be posted, and all of those things had already happened. So once those wheels are in motion, the only way to change the date then is to commence the hearing under our adjournment process under code, and then immediately consider a continuance. The mayor and I actually discussed this today. As you know, we are embarking on a project to revise municipal code. And as we discussed today, this is certainly a section we will look at, because I think based on your comments and comments from the public, it's a little bit unwieldy and has perhaps caused people to come here when our municipal code didn't allow us to continue it in any other way.
And so it's only because it was already posted. Had it not been posted, it could have been taken off of the agenda.
Yes, so posting, it's multiple steps. We put it on our website, the clerk has to notice it, and then I believe it's also posted on the property under municipal code requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions before I ask for a motion to open? Seeing none, can I get a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Can we please vote?
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Noonenkamp?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Aye.
Member Wink?
Aye.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you. So we now opened up the public hearing, so I will now ask members of staff actually to come up and then to invite the applicant for the plan unit development at 1314 West Oxford Avenue, the Sam's Automotive Property. So,
Mayor, and I will need to swear people in, so I don't know if we want to do that as a group for those that are here in person.
sure, I
Okay.
think we should
So I
do
think
that.
anybody who plans to speak tonight, if you could just please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in this matter now being heard by the Englewood City Council? Okay, great. And when you do come up to speak, if you could just state your name and either address or name and position for the record.
So yeah, I'm not sure if the applicant wants to just say a few words and then also just explain a little bit more about the reason for the postponement. Obviously, we have members of the public here that are being inconvenienced by this request, so.
Terrific.
Yeah, if you could just introduce yourself, state your name and your address.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. My name is Marcus Pockner. My address is 1480 Humboldt Street, Denver 80218. Thank you, Mayor and council members. I do want to acknowledge, and I certainly have understood the frustration and heard it this first part of this meeting. I do want to acknowledge what the city attorney shared. That's what we were told as well when we made contact with the city to try to make this as seamless as possible. We did not want there to be confusion, and I'll go through why we're asking for this. So I apologize. That was simply because notice had already been provided. So again, I'm Marcus Pockner. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, which is Embry. I am here to make a formal request to postpone or continue the public hearing to a date certain to March 6th for our presentation in the public hearing. There are two reasons for this request. The first is simply at Planning Commission and post-Planning Commission, we heard specifically from participants, from neighborhood participants, and after that from neighborhood engagement, that people wanted to see some additional public infrastructure improvements, primarily off-site improvements. So we have been working with public works staff, most specifically to look at a potential crosswalk at Jason Park, and we have been evaluating if that makes sense, and we'd actually love to include that more formally. So it's not just saying we might look at it, that we actually could see if it could happen, and we could include that as an off-site improvement. As you heard from speakers, this public infrastructure around the site, we want to do everything we can. So that is one of them. The second request was to contribute more monies to the pedestrian bridge that's proposed over Oxford Street. There is a set aside, but we're looking at adding additional money. So we got those requests post the notice. So then our second reason for asking for this request, because of that, we sent a formal letter to everyone in the notice area on 111. We also then this last Friday sent an email to the 300 people that we have worked with during this engagement process and said we'd be asking for this postponement. We certainly said it's your prerogative, but that we were hopeful it would be granted because we want to have that time to really evaluate this request. Lastly, we sent a reminder email today. So folks, we know there is some confusion and also some frustration that people want to have it, but we are simply asking for additional time for community engagement about a request that the community has made. There's no other issue. Lastly, I'll close with this, Mayor. The reason March 6th, that feels like that's a ways away. Your agenda at your next meeting is full. There's not an end of February meeting, so that's actually the next available meeting. So respectfully, we thank you so much for considering this. We would really prefer that we do it on March 6th so we have all of the public comments together, and frankly, so we're able to provide the public with all of the offsite improvements that we are proposing. So, Mayor, that I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Mr. Proctor. Is there anyone else from your staff that would like to speak?
We're great.
No? Any questions from members of council? Seeing none, Mr. Proctor, thank you very much for your time tonight. And just City Attorney, just for informational purposes for my behalf, next step here, will we vote now on the motion to postpone until date certain of March 6, 2023?
Yes, that's allowable under code. Our code is vague about the procedure from here. The only thing it says is we have to open the public hearing first. So we're a little bit flexible, but you certainly could have discussion on it at the council level and then vote at this time.
Okay, perfect. Any questions, Mayor Pro Tem? Go ahead.
Mayor, at this time, I'm prepared to introduce a motion to postpone agenda item 10A, public hearing for planned unit development at 1314 West Oxford Avenue to date certain March 6th.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Could I get a second?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Member Wink. Any further comments? Member Newnham.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to acknowledge that we do have a lot of citizens here tonight. We've got citizens who have joined us online, and it's not easy to carve out time out of a busy life and a busy schedule to be at City Hall on a Monday evening, especially with snow coming, and I don't want to discount that. And I don't want to be flippant about the time that they have given to this process with this potential postponement. But I also want to share that I have also heard from citizens who have supported this postponement because they would like to continue having conversations with the applicant about some of those improvements. I did want to share, because we're in a quasi-judicial hearing, that I received that communication with the rest of the council, that they would like to work out some of those additional enhancements. And so we have also received citizen support for the postponement, which is why I will be voting in favor tonight, but I don't take it lightly that we do have citizens here, and asking them to come back is an ask. But hopefully with that level of notice on March 6th, that will provide them the ability to return.
Thank you, Member Newnham. Member Wink.
Thanks, Mayor. I will be voting in favor of the postponement tonight for a few reasons. Each and every one of the reasons for postponing the hearing likely results in improvements that promise greater traffic and pedestrian safety, improved access. They all prove the potential for benefits to our constituents. So it seems largely in favor of the good of the city to postpone and enable all the powers that be to have the necessary conversations and put the plan together with the new pieces that were brought forth in and after the planning and zoning meeting. Secondly, these reasons were all brought forward by citizens of Englewood. And thirdly, I do want to also acknowledge that our postponement of it, if it does happen, that we absolutely do recognize, as Councilmember Nunnenkamp just said, the inconvenience for the citizens who did not have that information previously, and carved out time and made an effort and rearranged schedules and children and all sorts of details of your lives to be here and share your viewpoint. So please know that doesn't go lost on us. I would still prefer to enable you to have the benefits that will come forward by this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Wink. Anyone else? Seeing none, can we please vote?
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Newnham?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward.
Aye.
Member Wink.
Aye.
Member Woodward.
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you, City Clerk. And actually, I'm just gonna bring it up to members of council. We do have members of the public here that are expecting to speak tonight regarding the PUD. I know that we just postponed the PUD until March 6th. My preference would be to hold off on public comments until March 6th because there could be changes based off of what we heard from Mr. Prochner tonight. And obviously, the point of the public hearing is for council to make a decision based on the feedback from the public hearing from that evening. So I'm just concerned about actually having information that potentially could change. So, but I will leave it up to members of council to weigh in. Mayor Pro Tem.
Considering we just voted to postpone 10A to date certain, we cannot go further into this public hearing. We have agenda item 10B as well to consider.
Right.
So when you're prepared to call that, I'm prepared to make a similar motion.
Perfect. Thank you.
Point of order.
Mayor Pro Tem. Member Anderson.
We do need to close the public hearing before we continue to the next agenda item. Is that correct? Or is this part of the same hearing?
Well, the motion under municipal code is actually to adjourn the hearing to a date certain. So
Okay.
under the motion, it
It
has
is
been
closed automatically.
closed for now
Oh.
until March 6th. I would like to point out municipal code requires us to provide the date, the time, and the location. So, of course, council meetings are in this room at 6 p.m.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, moving on to agenda item 10B. This is a public hearing for the major subdivision for Sam's Automotive Redevelopment. So my understanding sounds like I do have to open this or ask for a vote to open the public hearing. And can I get a motion to open the public hearing for the major subdivision for Sam's Automotive?
So moved.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Noonenkamp. Can we please vote?
Member Anderson.
Aye.
Member Noonenkamp.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward.
Aye.
Member Wink.
Aye.
Member Woodward. Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you. I think we have to swear everyone in again for this public hearing, correct?
Can I make a motion to just
Oh, okay. Yeah,
just postpone
just
this one
postpone it?
too?
Yeah, go ahead, Member Anderson.
I move to close this public hearing and continue it on a date certain, March 6th at 6 p.m. in this room.
Makes sense. Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Can we please vote?
Member Anderson.
Aye.
Member Noonenkamp.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward.
Aye.
Member Wink.
Aye.
Member Woodward.
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye. Perfect. That now concludes the public hearing for tonight. Again, thank you very much to members of council for this. Also to members of the public, I know that many of you were looking to speak tonight. We are still asking for you to provide written comment, maybe even video information in terms of the public hearing that you can submit now through the public hearing. Is that correct? Through March 6th? So if anybody does want to submit written feedback for the public record on the public hearing, you could do so now through March 6th. So, and with that, we will now move to agenda item 11. We don't have any ordinances, resolutions, or motions for tonight. And then that takes us now to general discussion. And I will start it off with Mayor's Choice. I just want to remind everyone of the let me see how we worded it within the agenda. Regarding this Saturday, the council retreat that begins at 9 a.m. Through 3:30, and we will be at the Cross Purpose Building on 3855 South Broadway. So just want to remind all members of council of that. Also tomorrow, we do have we are going to be meeting with our Representative Meg Froelich, as well as, remind me again, it's not going to be our Representative Bridges, but.
It's a legislative aid for Senator Bridges, and I do have that in my city manager's report as well.
Perfect, and I'll let you speak to that aspect as well. And lastly, I wish I would have done this on the meeting on the 3rd, but I forgot to recognize our Deputy City Attorney, Victoria McDermott. She was recognized as Deputy City Attorney of the Year by the Metro City Attorney Associations during their year-end banquet in late December. We obviously appreciate all the contributions that our Deputy City Attorney has made here to the City of Englewood, and I'm glad to see that others are recognizing that as well. So thank you very much and congratulations. And with that, I will move to council members' choice. Anyone have anything tonight? Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I just wanted to provide a couple of notes on the process that we went through to get through to where we got tonight. We were notified in the mayor-manager meeting on Wednesday that the applicant had requested a delay. And we were faced with some options. We could either plan on doing business tonight as we did and call the public hearing and schedule it and just have that be the only item on the agenda. And then the question came up as to how we would notice the public. But the one thing that I want to be clear on here is that for me, this entire process, and I'll note that the proposed development is in District 4, which is the council district that I represent. This entire process is about due process. The city has established rules for how we conduct ourselves. There are established rules regarding what rights the applicant has when council members can consider the things that go into decision making for a development like this. And I can recall having contact from a number of members of the public from the very moment word started to spread of this process. And each time I've been contacted, I've had to say, I can't talk to you about this specific development. I'm only entitled to accept information that I received during the public hearing. Due process is a very important constitutional right in the US and in Colorado. It's part of the very basis by which this body gets its authority. So as far as there being the ability for us to improve processes and communication, I wholeheartedly agree with that. We can do better. And the only thing I can say is your suggestions on how we can do that will help, but you will never catch me doing something that violates due process for an applicant or a resident, because that's unethical, illegal, and it's just not how I operate.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Member Noonan-Camp and then Member Russell.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple things from me tonight. Just to follow up on the Mayor Pro Tem's comments, I concur that what is, I will choose my words here. The point of having a public hearing is so that we can hear from the public and so that it is accessible to them. And so anything we can do to modernize our systems and to share information for how citizens can easily engage in our processes is something that we should prioritize above everything else. So to that end, we do actually have an FAQ sheet on a PUD and the hearing process for the city. I would love to see staff maybe share some of that educational, informational meeting now that we do have until March 6th till we do this again. How do we really ensure that we're making it as easy as possible for citizens to engage and to understand the process of how to engage well? So that's a council request that we share more of that educational information and make sure it's updated because it's an incredibly important piece of what we do here. Secondly, I just wanted to share with the council that I did attend the Public Library Board meeting this last week. We met the night before the news about shutting the library due to health concerns, and just wanted to share that the Library Board discussed the decision of council, was very excited to have additional funding. They're moving forward with getting those staffing roles in place. They're moving very quickly and expeditiously on ensuring that they can be fully staffed when they reopen, and also looking at how they can continue to develop their strategic plan for 2023, their action plan. One of the main things that they're focusing on is how we market the library moving forward upon reopening, and the services that the library can provide to the community. I think a lot of people in Englewood don't know what the library offers. For example, you can borrow a state parks pass for free from the library to access all of our parks, which many people might not know that we have right here in the Englewood Public Library. So more information like that in the hands of the citizens is exciting. So they're working on good stuff.
Thank you, Member Noonan-Camp. Member Russell.
I just have a couple of things. So what was the process in choosing the location for the council retreat? I mean, I was pretty shocked that it wasn't in a city facility.
Thank you for the question, Member Russell. There wasn't really any science to it. We had talked about a number of city facilities and just felt like kind of getting in at an off-site location within the city might be nice. In addition, this council did fund that center, so we felt like them hosting us was the least they could do. I say that in jest, but they have been a partner of the city, particularly as we look to try to prevent homelessness in the community. They have a brand new facility, and I'm trying to remember the exact dollar amount. Member Anderson, do you remember the dollar amount that we invested in that?
I think it was 354,000.
That sounds about right. So it was really a staff decision.
So are we recording the meeting? And is there room for the public to attend?
Yes and yes.
And is the Zoom option available for that
Yes.
meeting also?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. My next question is, the board and commission appointments apparently aren't gonna be made on February 6th?
The appointment should be made next Monday night.
In the mayor manager meeting, I thought I heard that on the agenda for March 6th.
No, we should have it, there might have been, I may have misspoken or something along those lines, but it should be on the agenda for this coming Monday.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure because generally the
Right.
the dates that they're on the board are from February to. All right, those two things help me. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Russell. Member Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to bring up our Code Next study session next week, and just to get a little clarity on it. I know part of this was to talk about ADU standards and also, some other affordable housing related issues. I see there's a whole variety of things in this packet. I also have just kind of a smattering of other ideas that maybe don't particularly have anything to do with housing or affordable housing. I don't know if we have other study sessions planned or if this is coming close to the end. But I just wanted to see when is this next study session a good time to just bring up random Title 16 related ideas? Or when is kind of the final opportunity to do that and see what we can get consensus on before it goes back to P&Z?
Thank you for the question, Member Anderson. Luckily, we have our planning manager here. So Brian Isom, can you respond to that?
Yes, sir. This will not be the final study session item. We have one more that we're planning on that will kind of wrap up. I think there's 3 more chapters that you haven't seen after this. One's the definitions, which is a very large chapter. Then the sign chapter, and I think a historic preservation chapter that should tie up the remaining items. I think at that one, we could kind of do a catch-all, anything else that you have. We can, if you have questions, you can submit them to us and then we can work on them, or we can take them at that meeting.
Very good. Yeah, I'll see what I have that I could submit beforehand, but definitely want to make sure the way it gets agended is conducive to kind of open discussion on that item.
We're shooting for the end of February. I sent the meetings out to our consultants. I'm waiting on some responses back.
Okay, very good. Thank you for all the work that's gone into this. I know it's been quite a process. Appreciate it. That's all, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Member Wink.
Thanks, Mayor. I wanted to comment about to share in Councilmember Nunnenkamp's comment about what we can do better in terms of socialization of FAQs, other policies. And I say that specifically because previously, before Councilmember Nunnenkamp was on this council, this issue came up more than once, and I remember some very intentional and significant steps being taken to help apprise citizens of when events or changes, when things were happening during our council meeting and how to access updates. Our city attorney at the time was good about reminding us all where we need and when we need to post notices. And so I'd like us to maybe identify any existing gap between what we have already done to ensure exactly what Councilmember Nunnenkamp said this evening. I mean, there's a certain point where we can't maybe force someone to read something, but from what I remember, the city is doing what they should be doing and abiding to the law, and we even kind of went above and beyond a little bit to doubly make sure citizens have access. So, yeah, I'm a little at a loss, maybe. Just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Wink. Member Nunekamp.
I just want to spend a moment on this because I think it's really, really important. And I think that the city did a great job this last hearing, noticing the hearing. I saw many different updates, many emails. I will say we have only recently started posting those hearings on our social media. We have not always. That's something that we've been pushing for. So we are getting better at making sure the public knows about the hearing. I think the next step is empowering with the information of what happens at the hearing. How do they engage in the hearing? What are the processes? It's so opaque if you're on the outside. If you're a citizen looking in and trying to be influential, this is a government for the people, by the people, of the people. How can they actually influence decision making if they don't understand how the process fundamentally works? And so what can we do to provide those resources to empower them with information on how, you know, I really want to commend Member Anderson tonight for taking a moment to explain the process that we're in. That's so important. How do we think more proactively about those things generally and institutionalize them in all of our channels? And I think we can do a better job doing that and really making sure that the public feels like this is their space and they're welcome here and they can influence our decisions.
Member Anderson.
I don't know that I'm interested in reevaluating the process. I think there are some, like, it's actually, I think our public hearing process is pretty good. I think if anything, you know, that needs to be done, it would be a little bit more on the educational side, just to make sure people, because for a lot of people, oh, here, this is something that's happening in their neighborhood. They've never been to a public hearing before, maybe never even been to a city council meeting before, but now they have something really important to speak on. And coming down and navigating the quasi-judicial process is just hard, and it's confusing if it's your first time. It was confusing to me when I first started visiting city council meetings. What's the difference between a public hearing and a public comment? You know, I was just a few years ago, I didn't know, and now I do, so I certainly understand where people are coming from. But I'm not sure there's a lot wrong with I don't think there's anything really wrong with our process, but I do think Member Nunekamp is onto something. If we can make a little, you know, a little visual guide on how the process works or something to put out on social media to educate people, and be prepared at the beginning of these to explain how it's going to work, I think that will go a long ways.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Anyone else? Seeing none, that now takes us to City Manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll start with that. We certainly want to do the same thing in terms of empowering our residents with that knowledge. And so I believe we have some kind of how-to guides on some of those topics. So we will make sure that those are online, and to the members' council requests, we'll also reach out to people that have been involved in this PUD process so that they have links to those. I have a few kind of weighty topics to discuss, some of which have been requested by council, and one of which that I just want to proactively provide. And I'm going to be inviting a couple of people, one online, Christina Underhill, who is online, to talk about the library. But I'll start with our legislation, kind of a new process that we're starting. One of the things that council asks is to be a little more intentional on how we engage with our state and federal delegation with regard to policy. And so in kind of talking to each of you, in hearing your discussions at city council meeting, the leadership team took the opportunity to kind of start fleshing out some of the issues that you all have brought up, some of which have been solely staff driven. I don't think you all have directed us on PFAS, for instance, but that's a huge issue in water and our wastewater utilities. So today, and over the last couple of weeks, Krista Gravy, yours and my executive assistant, has been working to set up meetings with Meg Froelich, with Jeff Bridges, and we actually have his legislative aide coming, not Mr. Bridges, or Senator Bridges specifically. And then following up with that, we plan to have a meeting with Jason Crow. I do want to announce we heard from Congressman Crow's office that he will not be able to attend the meeting after all, so they were supposed to be back-to-back meetings. He's going to be flying and he expects delays, according to the airline. So we will be meeting with our two state representatives, state representative and our state senator. So a couple of things in the email that was sent to you all today in terms of the topic. We had housing affordability, PFAS, flushable wipes legislation, alcohol regulation in right-of-way, telecommunications in the right-of-way, and micro-trenching. And so those are all topics that we've had some discussion, with the exception, I think, of flushable wipes. We've talked about PFAS, but not a stance on it. So we have tentatively assigned council members to present on these. To that end, we provided council last week with an analysis, some background and analysis of these topics, as well as the ask that we're recommending, and based on what we've heard from council in various meetings on these topics. So please take a look at that. If you're not able to, or not, would rather not present those, staff will all be there. Our leadership team will all be there to present on those items. But tentatively, we have this kind of split up. The federal issues will be presented by different council members later. But for tomorrow, we have housing affordability with Member Newnenkamp, PFAS with Member Woodward, flushable wipes legislation, Member Russell, alcohol regulation and right-of-ways, Mayor Sierra, and telecommunications and right-of-way, as well as micro-trenching, which are related, Mayor Pro Tem Ward. I assign those just based on your interest, with the exception, again, of Member Russell, as we have not really talked about flushable wipes. So we're happy. Peter Van Rye, Director Van Rye, will be there to discuss any of those if you would, if you're not comfortable doing that. But we just feel like whenever we meet with elected representatives, we like to have elected representatives talking to elected representatives. It's we feel like it's more effective. So feel free to give feedback on that. We also provided that same type of list to you for federal, but we'll discuss that later since it's now not time sensitive. The next topic that we want to talk about is the library, and as I mentioned in the Friday City Manager's report to you all, or on Friday that I'd be reporting on this, just by way of background, really why did we decide to test? As you know, there were a lot of both local as well as national news coverage with regard to Boulder's testing of their library and the contamination that they found therein. In addition, we have had reports of drug usage in our bathrooms, and so we wanted to make sure we did that. So there were 4 restrooms that were tested, the 2 on this floor, on the second floor, as well as the 2 in the public library. We also tested various parts of the public library, did samples throughout the library to really make sure that there weren't other areas that could potentially be contaminated as well. So testing began the week of January 2nd. We received the results on January 11th. By mid-afternoon, we had closed the library on January 11th, notified council, we notified the library staff first, then all city staff, and then started pushing out the public information about that. I think really one of the bright spots in this, well, everyone who was involved, I think, really did an outstanding job, but within an hour and a half, we had a complete communications plan, which I think speaks to our crisis communications plan that our communications team put together. So very proud of that work. So we have contracted with Quest Environmental for that testing, and I'd like to call on Director Rochelle to come and speak to you about kind of next steps and what we expect moving forward.
Good evening, Director.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So quick update on where we are with the library. So we have conducted testing. We have solicited bids for remediation. We had 2 firms reply to our solicitation. One has already walked the premises and provided a proposal for remediation. We are meeting with the second vendor tomorrow to walk the premises and should have their quote for remediation by the end of the week. With that in hand, we are hopeful to have someone under contract, again, by Friday. And depending on how quickly they can get started, we're told we could have folks in the building working on remediation as soon as first of next week. We don't know the timeline yet. It'll be, we have a rough timeline from the first quote. We're waiting for the second quote to come in to confirm that timeline. These are state certified companies that deal in this remediation. We'll also be collaborating internally to look for efficiencies and ways to try and prevent this from occurring in the future. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Mayor Pro Tem.
Can you describe the remediation process? What specifically are we paying for?
So the remediation will follow the state requirements. So we are paying for the cleaning and will be the replacement of certain aspects of the ventilation system, the walls in the library, certain things in the kind of open area on the north end of the lobby. And that'll all be detailed inside the quote from the contractors, following state practices. And we will have to do some retesting throughout that process to show that the mitigation has been successful.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions from council?
Director, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Member Woodward.
Is there an accessible place to get to that ductwork between the floors?
We do have an elevator that staff can use to get between floors. There's also the elevator in the lobby here that is currently available to get between floors.
No, I'm talking about the ductwork, the actual
ductwork.
exhaust
Yes, sir.
fan ductwork.
Our facilities teams are working with the remediation companies to identify that. It's my understanding that the actual motor and fan is on the roof. So that'll, based on the feedback, we're determining if that could be cleaned or replaced. As far as the ductwork itself, it's primarily the exhaust vents.
Right.
Where the challenges are.
I understand that. I guess where I'm going with the question is, would it be easier if it was accessible to just replace the ductwork?
Great question.
I mean, it's not a heavy-duty ductwork, it's sheet metal. And I'm just wondering if it's cheaper to do that than to clean the inside of those pipes.
Great question, and we are certainly going to be looking at that with these two companies, looking for the best cost benefit. So that is certainly on the table if accessible.
Great, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Member Russell.
Thank you. Do we have any idea how long it's going to take to get all of that done once they start?
So it will be dependent on how quickly they can obviously get going, the extent, and then the testing or retesting, if you will. We're hopeful that this will be maybe 30 to 45 day process, but we're still evaluating that and waiting on that second quote.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any further questions from council? Don't see any. City Manager.
Director Rochelle, can you also comment on the bathrooms, our work to ensure bathroom facilities are available?
Yes, yeah, thank you. So we currently have, because we have no public restrooms at the moment, the bathrooms on the third floor are badge access. We have secured a heated trailer. It's downstairs in the garage. We have some increased security around it. It has men and women's restrooms separated. We also secured 2 ADA compliant facilities in addition to the trailer available for the public.
Member Nunnkamp.
This may be a little bit ahead of where we're at right now, but are we also putting thought into how we avoid this from happening again?
Great question. So that's going to be a continued conversation. We're looking at several options and continue to have that conversation as we work to remediate the library. Things from increased security, badge access to bathrooms, all those things are kind of being looked at right now based on the issue at hand, budget, best practice. We've also been in contact with Boulder, kind of what they're doing. They haven't opened their bathrooms yet. They plan to. So we're trying to look at that from all sides.
Thank you, Member Nunnkamp. Member Russell, go ahead.
Thank you. And so after hours, are the restrooms just going to be locked? And there's security out there when they're open?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct. They will be locked. The trailer actually has locks on the doors. The 2 ADA facilities will have locks added to them. They will be reopened in the morning.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any further questions for the director on this topic? No. Thank you, Director. City Manager.
Thank you. And to close this section off, if I could also ask Christina Underhill, Director of Parks, Recreation, Library, to come on and talk about the impact on operations and what we're doing there for both staff and our patrons.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Council. I want to provide an update on the programming. As you know, the physical library is closed, but staff are still hard at work. We are paying for our staff for the regular shifts while the library is closed, and we do have projects they're working on. We do have a lot of services are still available. So our youth and teen programs, including our story times, early readers book club, and teen after hours, they've all been moved to the community room for this week, next, and as long as we need to, we'll continue with those programs. Our adult programming is also continuing, has been moved to other locations or will be on Zoom. So if patrons want to find out where their program is, we are updating it daily on the events page. If you go to the library website, you can get updates on that. And side note, we get newspapers delivered to our library daily, and we are actually delivering those over to the Malley Center for use over there. Our staff are regularly checking in materials. So if you have a library book checked out, feel free to return that to our book drops. Staff are checking those multiple times throughout the day. Also, we're getting deliveries and pickups from the Colorado Library Consortium for outgoing materials and incoming too. So any items that have been placed on hold, so if you have a book on hold, we'll keep them on hold, will not expire them. We are preparing to move to curbside pickup here in the very near future once we get the scope of work back from these contractors and know that it is safe to get the library materials out to our community. We will announce that via website and social media. It'll be much like during the COVID closure. So again, we'll keep the website up to date. And we have a lot of resources online, speaking of the website. So you can access our ebooks, audiobooks, movies, newspapers, magazines, research materials. That is all online. So while the library is physically closed, we still have a lot going on for the public. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director Underhill. Any questions from members of council? Member Woodward.
Did I understand curbside pickup of books ordered over online?
So curbside may happen in the next couple weeks. Again, we're waiting for the contractors who are going to do the cleanup to give us the green light that those are okay to go out to our public. So we should have more information in the next week, and we'll announce that via social media and website, and contact anyone that has something on hold that they can come get it at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Any other questions for Director Underhill? Don't see any further questions. Thank you very much, Director Underhill. And yeah, thank you to your entire staff. I love the fact that you were really proactive on this. I know that Member Woodward brought this up during the January 3rd council meeting. And if I remember correctly, you guys were already on it. I believe you stated it was the 2nd, just based on the news that we got from Boulder. So I really appreciate you taking a proactive approach, and like you stated, City Manager, the communication on this has been really strong, so thank you for that.
Great, and just to go ahead.
Go ahead, Director Underhill.
No, I just want to thank our city attorney and city manager's office and all of you for the support and moving forward with this. This is nothing we wanted to be dealing with, but I think the staff are taking it in stride, and we appreciate the public support as well through this process. So thank you all.
Thank you. And I just want to close out by giving the city attorney credit, who really was watching what was going on in Boulder and said, I think we should probably do this. And our facilities team jumped into action in Public Works and got on this. And so I'm glad to be ahead of it instead of having throngs of residents coming and demanding action like is now happening at libraries across the state and indeed the nation now. Last and certainly not least, very timely for tonight, I've asked Director Rochelle to again present to council on our snow plan. I know there has been, and this was something that was requested by Mayor Sierra, and two parts that I've asked for an update on. Number one, kind of our closeout of the New Year's Eve timeframe storm, and what we're doing with that. I know we have not been able to get to all sites that have requested, for ice in particular to be addressed. That work is continuing, but also to discuss what's coming up with this storm that is probably hitting around now. So, Director Rochelle.
Good evening again. So recap on our New Year's storm. So we had back-to-back events, averaging somewhere between 6 and maybe a little over 8 inches combined, with extremely cold temps in between. So Public Works street staff deployed all 4 snowplows during that event for 24 plus hours, starting at 7 p.m. all the way through the night to 7 a.m. Morning and day shift kicked in at 7 a.m. Continued plowing and applying de-icing materials to the roadways. After approximately 2 or 3 days of nonstop 24-hour shifts, We moved to day shifts and continued to apply until all local streets receive de-icing materials to assist in the melting of compacted snow at that point. And streets crews up to today have been addressing Q alert requests for ice removal. So we have broken out our what's called yellow iron, the motor grader. You probably may have seen it going up and down the road, addressing specific concerns and trying to focus first around bus stops and schools, and then also evaluating and having a lead worker go out and evaluate the requests for severity so that we try and tackle those as soon as possible. Those operations continued up through today. We did have a slightly reduced staff today because we sent folks home so that they could rest up for starting tonight's shift. Tonight's event, somewhat similar. We will have crews on staff and out now, running all 4 of our trucks, applying de-icing material and plowing based on our snow plan, our priority routes. We also have our residential plow stood up and ready to go at the end of the event if we get close to 8 inches. And we will then run down the middle of local streets, followed up by further evaluation and additional application of de-icing materials. From there, we'll move back to kind of Q alerts, stand up our yellow iron, and start again working on ice based on requests, severity, bus stops, school locations that need ice removal, where typically we see that on roadways that have buildings or shade. They're typically east-west roadways and have that north facing, so they're not getting that sun this time of year. Those are primarily where we're seeing issues with these colder temps, where you get a little bit of sun, it melts it, it drains, a little bit down the road, and then we get back into the cycle again of pooling and refreezing overnight with these super cold temps. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director Rochelle. Member Wink?
Thank you, Mayor. Welcome, and thank you. I believe a couple of weeks ago, we were down 1 truck, and when you mentioned all 4 trucks, does that mean all are operational? And
We are actually down a truck.
Still, okay.
We actually took the blade off of that truck, because we only have 4 blades, and applied it to another truck so that we could have 4 operational tonight. I will say that we ordered trucks in 2021. Those are now, we received a report late last week, they are now in Colorado. And so we're closer, and they are being outfitted with blades and hydraulics. So we are very hopeful that in the next, I say 2 to 3 weeks, that we will have those on site at the service center and be using those.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you.
Yes. Oh, sorry, I should add real quick. We have a request from Councilmember Russell, council request, and we're putting together that information about inventory and needs associated with snow, and we hope to have that to you shortly.
Member Woodward?
Yeah, I just want to mention that I think the school district needs to be notified that plowing snow into the street, onto the right-of-way, shouldn't be an option to them. I've seen it at 2 different schools now, Englewood High School and Cherry Lynn. And I had mentioned at the last meeting, Stanford, hopefully was going to be plowed before and opened up, or the street opened up by the time that school opened. Well, I think it was the next day or a couple days later, I had told the city manager that I noticed that they had plowed the street into piles, and the piles were going to be picked up. I thought Public Works had done it. I realized last week, going to pick up my grandson, that no, Public Works didn't do it, the school district did it. They made these piles in the street, which shut down Stanford, because you can't get up next to the curb because there's piles there. So I think the school district somebody should let the school district know that dumping their snow into the street shouldn't be an option for them, just like it isn't for citizens. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your comment. We'll coordinate with our street supervisor and contacts at the school districts and have that conversation.
Member Noonekamp?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the information. two questions from me. One is, you mentioned that you're prioritizing schools for the de-icing, but I also have heard from residents that it still feels quite dangerous around the schools because they have to park their car to walk their child into school and that it's sheets of ice everywhere. Is there something more we can be doing? Is that kind of the extent of what we can do? Because we're still hearing that concern from citizens.
Yes, so there, the challenge at the moment is a little bit staffing and a little bit equipment related. We can obviously do more with more staff and more equipment, and it's gonna be really dependent on the availability of both to get out there. The de-icing materials work in certain temperatures. You start getting above freezing, they start getting activated and help remove that ice. To drive the motor grader and then have a truck follow it around and also a loader to pick it up and dump it. I should say we did activate a piece of equipment last week that hasn't been activated in a little while. That's gonna cut the time, by 90% to load ice, to make things more efficient. So we are looking at ways to utilize things available to the city to expedite these types of things. Communication is key. We do have lead workers going out trying to find locations that maybe aren't coming in on the Q report. The Q reports help staff prioritize and know where there's issues, but we really do rely on citizens and others to be our eyes and ears on the ground when these issues are not being corrected.
That's helpful, thank you. And my other question was, we're used to the Colorado Sunshine doing a lot of this work for us, which we're in this unique situation where we've had this cold spell and we're expecting another one. Are there any situations when we know that the weather is going to be this way where we would consider plowing more residential streets? Is that just a sheer staffing concern, but just to help alleviate the ice that stays on the street for so long?
Yeah, so currently is posted on our website. When we start getting near that 8-inch mark is when we get out there and try and plow those residential streets. It also does come back to a little bit to staffing. Our red routes, our priority routes are usually based on life safety, to make sure that fire and police can get to the neighborhood. So we're trying to plow within a certain distance of all residents so that they can get to a plowed street. That goes for residents and fire life safety.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I'm kind of curious about product. You mentioned de-icing, and I remember, I haven't seen this for some time in Englewood. They used to use gravel, and the challenge that we had with the New Year's snow in my neighborhood was ice, as you made reference. So when you're pulling up in your car to an intersection that is a sheet of ice, and it's a four-way stop, that's very dangerous. But if it has gravel, you can get some traction, usually, or more traction than you would have had otherwise. So I've always been kind of curious why we aren't using as much of that gravel mixture that we used to see used more in the 90s or 2000s, and a lot of municipalities seem to have gone away from that.
Yeah, great question. So we're using a mixture of two different products. One is a clear, more blue product. One is more, and you've probably seen it, more of our brownish colored product. It almost looks a little bit like gravel, but it's actually ice slicer, so it reduces the melting point to move that. I believe one of the reasons we've gotten away from it is our MS4 permit for storm drainage. If we put gravel down, that ultimately ends up in our curb and gutters, which ultimately ends up in our pipes, and we have issues with cleaning. The current product dissolves in water, and so a little more effective from melting the ice standpoint. And we use a coarser gravel or a coarser material that helps to provide that same traction. So we're trying to kind of balance the two, provide that traction without clogging up our pipes and stormwater facilities.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I'm digesting this correctly. There's a combination of environmental regulations along with a concern about sending material into our stormwaters that's keeping us from using what we used to use?
It's probably a little bit environmental, also a little bit of infrastructure maintenance.
Okay.
Because you'd have to get in there and continue to clean the pipes. We did bring forward a contract a couple of council meetings ago to do an inventory and start cleaning some of our storm pipes out. I have no doubt some of the gravel you mentioned from previous decades will be in there.
Yeah, sitting on this dais, I'm quite familiar with solving one problem and creating another one. So I'm glad to hear there's some rhyme and reason to it. Thank you.
Yes.
Director, a couple questions for me. Going back to the storm that led into New Year's, we did have the plow trucks go through city streets during that time, correct? Or sorry, the residentials I meant.
We had a few. We were not able to hit them all with the plow.
Okay. So we were able to hit certain parts of the city, but not completely. And then in terms of residentials, the residential streets or the smaller streets outside of the primary and the secondaries, they're not receiving de-icer during most storms, correct?
That is correct. They are
Okay.
typically not. The 8 inches is generally our threshold to start tackling locals, and they come in priority after the red and green routes, the priority blue routes.
Is there a reason for that outside of just manpower, bandwidth, or is there a cost issue with it as well?
It's kind of all of the above.
Okay.
We try and hit the major arterials, collector roadways, again, just to provide that access to life safety and the larger network, and try and get at least each residence within a block of the grid so they can get to a plowed street and then come back to the residentials if we get near that threshold.
Thank you, Director. Member Woodward?
Thank you. I just wanted to comment on Mayor Pro Tem Ward's mention of utilizing gravel, which typically is more of a sand. That was done for back in probably 2011, 12, something like that. We went to Ice Slicer because of that was a big part of why we had the big brown cloud in Denver, Colorado Metro. And there's obviously a noticeable difference. So the Ice Slicer is a natural product coming out. I believe it was coming out of Utah then. I think it probably still is.
I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, my guess is it's being mined somewhere around there.
Yes, and I believe it for the most part dissolves, and it's environmentally much better than sand and gravel. Thank you.
Member Russell?
Thank you. I don't know if anybody's put any Q alert in Dartmouth on the south side of the street, really from, it's not so much at Broadway, but east going all the way to University. There are spots that are really bad. The sidewalk is lower and the gutters are all full of ice, so that it's melting on the sidewalks and makes it really slick. So I think some of those gutters need to be cleaned out on Dartmouth and Downing on the southeast corner. I think there's a bunch of ice there. But there's quite a bit of ice buildup in the gutters along the south side of Dartmouth, mostly where there's trees. So.
Okay, yeah, thank you. We'll make note and take a look at that. Certainly, one of our other things that we're looking at is if the ice spills off of the gutter onto the sidewalk, that adds an additional layer of concern.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Member Russell. Anything else, Director? Sorry, Member Nooncamp, go ahead.
Sorry, I just have one last question. There's been a lot in the news about plowing residential streets. You know, we have a policy. There's been a lot of conversation around Denver's plowing policies. Do most metro areas not plow residential streets, you know, below a certain inch threshold? Are we an outlier? Is this very consistent? I'm just curious, can you position us a little bit in the rest of the metro?
Sure, so I'll rely on my previous experience in Aurora. As an example, Aurora does not plow local streets until you reach a certain threshold. It's pretty common that those local streets, you know, the storm has to be, I'll say, somewhat impactful and significant before local streets are tackled. That said, we are currently evaluating our snow plan, looking for efficiencies. I believe there are several that we can gain. We do plan to come to council with some additional information at the end of the season, and are also thinking in the fall before next season to have that conversation hopefully twice a year to report kind of where we were and our plan going forward and continue to make improvements.
That's great. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Director, very much for the information. City Manager, anything else?
Director, if you can stay for just another moment.
Sure.
I know one of the issues that we had when we were towing in conjunction with street sweeping was public discontent over that. However, I've had a couple of complaints that I've forwarded to Public Works that clearly show people parked all around a school and then saying, why isn't the city motor grading around our school? How are we addressing that? And do we have staff capacity to continue addressing these ice dams even as we're now responding to this snow event that's on its way?
Yeah, great question. So parking is it is a challenge if folks aren't moving their cars. On the school side, we're trying to outreach to our contacts at the schools if we can block off an area the day before. However, we have seen some instances where I've seen cars that haven't moved for a month. And so if an ICE complaint comes in, it makes it very challenging to get that piece of heavy equipment in there. I mean, it's a very large piece of mechanical equipment. It's not like a little Bobcat or anything. So that does present a significant challenge, but it comes back to working with the schools and the constituents to, one, make sure they understand our limits with our equipment, but two, if there's an opportunity to say, hey, you know, if we can get you and your neighbor to move your cars, that'll allow a larger stretch of roadway to be cleared, and things of that nature. With respect to staffing, we currently, based on our numbers of available equipment, we do have staff to operate it, but that'll be part of our discussion as kind of the year-end wrap-up, and in addition to the council request, to identify some areas for improvement.
Thank you. And Mayor and Council, thank you for indulging in a more robust city manager's report. I thought these were timely issues that council needed to be briefed on as soon as possible. So thank you for the time.
Thank you very much, City Manager. Thank you very much for the directors for speaking as well tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, and with that, everyone, we are now adjourned. We'll see you all on Saturday. Have a good evening.